My name is Marina. Sometimes it feels like my whole life is a long road I walk half blind, holding on to tiny sparks of warmth just to keep moving. And yet, on one of those roads, I met her for the first time. It was autumn, the kind where the leaves don't simply fall, they whisper, the kind that smells of endings but hides new beginnings in the cold air. I was traveling to another city to close a painful chapter of my life, convinced that nothing warm was waiting for me ahead. And then I saw her at the station, a girl who stood with the quiet confidence of someone who knew answers to questions I hadn't even asked myself yet. She lifted her eyes, and something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, more like a door opening with the faintest touch. I asked if she knew where the exit to my street was. She smiled, softly, almost apologetically, and said she could walk me there. We walked side by side. I caught myself listening not so much to her words, but to her voice. Warm, calm, made for holding someone's soul when it trembles. She told me a funny story about once getting lost in the same area, laughing at her own stubbornness. When we reached the crossroads, I felt a strange emptiness, as if I didn't want the moment to end, as if letting her walk away meant losing something I hadn't even gotten yet. She looked at me with a little more attention than strangers usually give one another and asked, "Are you staying in the city for long?" I didn't know how to answer, maybe because for the first time in a long while, I saw a gaze with no judgment, no attempt to read me, only quiet presence. So I told her, "I'm not sure, maybe longer than I planned." She told me her name was Alina, that she lived nearby, and that if I ever needed company, she often walked along the river in the evenings. She said it lightly, casually, as if she had known me for years. We parted, but her eyes walked beside me long after. That evening, I sat on the cold hotel bed, realizing something terrifying and beautiful at once. I wanted to see her again. I wanted to hear that voice, to watch that soft smile appear for no reason. But then the fear came. I didn't understand what was happening to me. Did I even have the right to feel something like this? And why was it her who slipped so easily into the broken spaces in me, places I had kept locked for so long? I went to sleep convinced that everything would fade by morning, but the first thought in my mind when I opened my eyes was her name. The next evening, I found myself standing on the river promenade, pretending I had ended up there by accident. But I wasn't fooling anyone, least of all myself. The sky was turning the color of bruised roses, dim and aching, and the water carried the last reflections of daylight like fading memories. I kept telling myself I wasn't waiting for her. I just wanted a walk, some fresh air, a distraction. But every time footsteps echoed nearby, my heart reacted before my mind could catch up. And then I saw her, Alina, walking toward me with that same soft confidence, as if the world around her always slowed down a little. When she recognized me, a small, warm smile bloomed on her face, the kind that feels like sunrise after a long winter. "I had a feeling you might be here," she said. Her voice, God, her voice. It wrapped around me gently, like someone placing a blanket over shivering shoulders. We walked side by side again. Only this time, the silence between us wasn't empty. It was full, filled with the words neither of us dared to speak yet. She asked about my life, the road I was on, the things I was running from. At first, I answered carefully, avoiding depth, as if depth could drown me. But she listened, truly listened, in a way I had forgotten anyone could. And little by little, my walls began to crumble. I told her about the exhaustion, the broken pieces I had been dragging behind me, the heaviness I never admitted to anyone. When I finished, she didn't give me advice or empty comfort. She simply looked at me with eyes full of quiet understanding and said, "You didn't deserve to carry all that alone." I don't know why that sentence hit me so hard. Maybe because no one had ever said it. Maybe because I wanted so desperately to believe it. We stopped near the railing overlooking the dark river. The air smelled of wet leaves and faraway rain. Alina stood close enough that I could feel her warmth through the cold breeze. "I'm glad you're here," she said softly, "even if it's for reasons you haven't figured out yet." I turned to her, really looked at her calmness, her sincerity, her presence that felt like a hand reaching into a storm. And then came the moment that changed something inside me forever. She didn't touch me, didn't step closer, didn't make any bold gesture. She just looked, with a gentle, trembling openness, as if offering a piece of her own heart to match the one I was afraid to show. It was the first time someone saw me not as someone strong or wounded or rebuilding, but simply as a woman who deserved to be held by something real. I felt tears sting my eyes, not from sadness, but from the terrifying relief of being seen. She noticed, of course. She didn't say anything. She simply stood beside me, letting me feel whatever I needed to feel, without rushing me, without filling the moment with noise. We stayed like that until the streetlights turned the river into a ribbon of gold. When we finally walked back, she stopped at the corner of my street and said quietly, "Marina, whatever happens next, you don't have to run from it." I didn't know what to answer. My heart did. But my voice wasn't ready yet, so I whispered the only truth I could. "I'm scared." She nodded gently, her eyes soft. "It's okay. I am too." And somehow, the fear didn't feel so heavy anymore.